Why did your neighbors accuse your baby of being evil? So, I'm sitting in the stuffy community center clutching my 6-month-old daughter while 30 neighbors stare at me like I'm harboring a terrorist. My next-door neighbors filed an emergency complaint because my baby is apparently sending coded messages through her crying patterns. Yeah, you heard that right. They think my infant knows Morse code. This whole thing started when we moved into the neighborhood 3 months ago. Just me, my wife, and our newborn, Leslie. We were your typical sleep-deprived new parents, stumbling through feedings every 3 hours and changing what felt like 1,000 diapers a day. My wife went back to work after maternity leave, so I was on paternity leave doing the stay-at-home dad thing. Leslie was colicky, which meant she cried a lot, like a lot. The pediatrician said it was normal, just had to write it out. So I did what any desperate parent does, downloaded every baby app known to mankind. White noise machines, sleep schedules, feeding trackers, diaper logs. I had spreadsheets of when she ate, slept, pooped, cried. Thought if I could find a pattern I could fix it. Spoiler alert, babies don't care about your spreadsheets, but I kept tracking everything anyway because it made me feel like I had some control over the chaos. The problem started when Stan and Karen from next door decided Leslie's crying wasn't random. Stan's a retired military guy who spends his retirement watching conspiracy documentaries. Karen runs a true crime podcast nobody listens to. They started recording Leslie's crying through the shared wall. Then Stan got this idea that the crying patterns were too regular to be natural. He pulled up some Morse code chart from the internet and started matching dots and dashes to her wails. Next thing I know, they're convinced Leslie is transmitting messages. They tried talking to me about it casually at first. Stan cornered me by the mailboxes saying he heard patterns and asking if we had family overseas. Karen stopped my wife in the driveway, asking weird questions about whether we'd had any strange visitors. When we laughed it off, they escalated, started a group chat with other neighbors, shared recordings of Leslie crying with timestamps and their Morse code translations, claimed she was spelling out coordinates and dates. Some neighbors thought they were crazy, but others started getting paranoid too. That's when they called the emergency HOA meeting. They presented a whole case with PowerPoint slides, audio recordings, and printouts of Morse code alphabets. Stan stood up there with a laser pointer showing how Leslie's 2 a.m. crying spelled out SOS in Morse code. Karen had graphs showing crying frequency peaks that supposedly matched with satellite passes. I kid you not, she actually said the word satellite passes with a straight face. When it was finally my turn to respond, I stood up still holding Leslie, who naturally started crying right then because of course she did. The whole room tensed up like she was about to transmit launch codes or something. I pulled out my phone and opened the baby tracker app I'd been religiously updating for 3 months, started walking them through the data. See this crying session at 2:47 a.m. that Stan says was spelling SOS? That's exactly 3 hours after her last feeding. Look, here's every single 2 to 3 a.m. crying session for the past month, all exactly 3 hours after feeding. I swiped through screen after screen. This pattern Karen thinks matches satellite passes? That's her witching hour. Every baby has one. Google it. Then I pulled up the audio recordings I had from our white noise machine that also picks up ambient sound. Started playing them. You could hear Leslie crying, sure, but you could also hear Stan's TV blasting through the walls. Funny how the suspicious crying always happens during Stan's action movie marathons, I said. Played another clip. And this crying session that supposedly spelled out coordinates, that's when Karen was recording her podcast about the Zodiac Killer at full volume. The HOA president, this sweet old lady named Dorothy, asked to see my phone. She started scrolling through months of data, cross-referencing it with Stan and Karen's evidence. She looked at the feeding times, the diaper changes, the sleep windows. Then she looked at their Morse code translations. Back to my app, back to their papers. Finally, she looked up at Stan and asked, "So, you're telling me this baby is smart enough to know Morse code but still poops herself 6 times a day?" The room went completely silent for about 3 seconds before Dorothy started chuckling, then giggling, then full-on cackling. Within seconds, the entire board was losing it. Karen looked like she wanted to sink into the floor. Dorothy looked at Stan and Karen and said, "Motion to dismiss this complaint on grounds of being absolutely ridiculous." Then she turned to me and said, "You and your daughter are free to cry whenever you need to. Meeting adjourned."